As a business owner, are you aware of what elimination of the California EV mandate means for your business? Well, we're going to talk about it today. We're going to break it down, how it's going to affect manufacturers, recyclers, as well as consumers. What do you think about that, Rich?
I think it's going to be really positive news. But let's start with the first question I have for you. What is the California EV mandate?
Well, that's kind of a three-part answer because the mandate it's the California Advanced Clean Cars Act 2, the ACC 2. That's the first part, right? Which is basically phasing out of internal combustion engines over a period of time getting to 2035 in California, where no longer can you buy a brand new internal combustion engine vehicle after 2035. So there's a phase out period. So that's one aspect of the mandate. The other one is the Advanced Clean Trucks Act. It's called the ACT, ACT, and that is dealing specifically with diesel trucks, diesel engines, not gasoline or petrol, however you want to say it. And then the third one is the omnibus low NOx, the low nitrous oxide emissions. So higher CARB standards for existing vehicles on the road that remain on the road in California beyond the phase-out dates. So those are the three California I would call them waivers that California had received from the EPA. And you know, what's interesting about it is most people aren't aware that we currently have 17 states plus the District of Columbia that are following the California CARB standards through these waivers that the EPA has allowed California. So that's what it is. So it's the elimination.
What are some of the negative effects of the mandate?
Oh, some of the negative effects? Well, let's talk a little bit about manufacturers, okay? So they were required to switch their entire fleet to electric by a certain date. And you can imagine how costly that was, right? And funny thing is, as they were going through this process, costs were being driven up and sales were going down. And that's a negative to switch to an all-electric fleet. And it was a rapid switch across this timeline. And, you know, just think about it, eliminating ICE engine vehicles, right? That's a very high cost for them. A very high cost.
We've spoke about this where Ford came out with statements. I mean, they've lost billions and billions of dollars on switching production and having to come out with options for EV vehicles. So yeah, it's very costly for the manufacturers.
Yeah, and then, you know, shutting down some production lines and eliminating jobs.
Yeah, that hurts.
None of that's good.
No,
not at all. If you look at consumers for a second, you know, just for a moment, you talk about it's a push, right, to get them into EVs that they're maybe not comfortable with. Why wouldn't they be comfortable with it?
How about range? They're limited in range.
Okay, so range reliability is an issue.
Charging stations, there's not a whole heck of a lot across the nation. We've heard stories where people have, you know, they're driving and they're almost out of electricity and the charging station that they pull up to isn't working or it's been, you know, vandalized. They can't get their payments processed. So then what?
Yeah, well, then what, right?
Yeah.
Higher costs for what? For the vehicle itself? Because the EVs aren't they about $8,000 to $10,000 more than the comparable ICE engine?
That sounds about right.
Yeah, something like that. Insurance is a little bit higher. Charging is costly. And they have limited choices, right?
Yes.
So especially if you go all electric, you're really eliminating your choice,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're somebody like me that likes a gas engine.
That's myself as well. I like the ICE engines.
Consumers also have to deal with the higher carb standards, right, for the existing ICE engines on the road.
Right.
Get those smog checks. If it's not passing, you got to get some work done on the vehicle, make sure it gets passed. And what happens if it's a gross polluter?
Well, then it's taken off the road if you can't fix it.
Sell it to somebody out of state where
Right.
they don't have the same standards. That's kind of where it goes, right?
Hey guys, have you ever asked yourselves, am I really reaching the top of the market on my catalytic converter recycling? Are you guys decanning and getting paid via an assay? And if you're not decanning, why not? Are you still throwing your oxygen sensors in your scrap bin and getting paid pennies on the dollar? What about your spark plugs? A lot of you watching this touch handle spark plugs on the daily. Stop throwing those in the trash. They have recycling value also. I want to encourage you to take our 3-day workshop. Businesses have learned to go from selling catalytic converters in the can to decanning and actually reaching the top of the market by getting paid via an assay. Businesses have also learned how to recycle spark plugs, and they're doing it on a massive scale. Click the link below, take advantage of this opportunity, start making more profits for your business today.
Well, then also recyclers, how does that affect the recyclers? Well, eventually, with fewer internal combustion engine cars on the road, it's going to limit the amount of used parts for internal combustion engines. So a little bit fewer sales as far as that goes. I mean, also dealing with battery recycling. Now, battery recycling can be costly. It could be hazardous.
Yeah, definitely hazardous. Look at the stories we've heard of, people with certain models where the manufacturer has come out and told them, don't charge your vehicle in the garage because of potential battery fire, battery explosion. So
Right,
I could only
exactly.
imagine if I was storing hundreds of them in my warehouse and the potential hazard of that. So yeah, that's something to think about.
Right. Well, before we get to maybe some of the benefits or who this really benefits, right? I want to talk a little bit about the fact that the federal waiver, it was voted 246 to 164 in Congress, April 30th. That's pretty good. And in the Senate had a version on May 22nd that it voted. And did you tell me that it was a bipartisan support for the bill when you were reading something about that?
Yeah, there was one Democratic senator. Her name is Elisa Slotkin from Michigan. And she voted.
She crossed over?
She did. She voted in favor of eliminating the mandate because I believe there's a million Michiganders, as they're called, that would be affected because they're in the U.S. auto industry. So they're the people building the cars in Michigan.
I think I saw a quote, something along the lines that she said that she was voting to try to protect those jobs in Michigan.
Absolutely.
So that really tells you that, going all EV was going to cost a lot of jobs for the car industry, manufacturers
Yes.
of cars.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I guess now that we've stated that, who benefits from the elimination of the mandate?
Well, there's manufacturers, of course, are going to
Yeah.
benefit, right? Now you got, they don't have the need to switch over for tooling and production lines, and they don't have to shut those down. They don't have to eliminate some of those jobs, but they can offer more diverse products instead of a narrow range of EVs where this was going.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? And so that's going to, lower costs, save jobs. They're not going to have to fight the increased CARB standards for these 17 plus states, plus the District of Columbia.
Right. Who also adopted this.
Right.
California.
During this phase out period, these carb standards were getting tighter and tighter and tighter.
Oh, we know, especially here in California.
Absolutely. So the consumers get more choices. We always like that, right?
Absolutely.
We like the fact that we get some lower costs, right? We get the less stringent testing requirements and freedom of choice. I would say that should be number one.
Yeah,
I think freedom of
pretty,
choice for the consumer
good.
should actually be number one.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. So what about recyclers? How's it going to help them?
Well, it's positive. You know, us in the automotive recycling sector, that just gives us more hope that now the ICE engine or even the hybrid engine vehicles, they're still going to be out there as options for people. And there'll still be EVs, you know, that if people, that's their option, that's great. I'm not against all EVs, but I think, like you just said, freedom of choice.
I think choice is
I'd like to
where
have
it's at.
the option to pick what I want to purchase.
Yeah, me
The
too.
vehicles that I want to drive.
Right, right.
The old air-cooled Porsches, but that's another story.
That's where this goes. We're going for the air-cooled Porsches.
That's right.
Well, with more ICE engines, there's more ICE vehicle parts for recyclers to sell.
Yeah, there'll be future parts, you know, once they reach that end of line, when they get into the recycling.
So for the catalytic converter recyclers, I guess that means that there's hope in the future, because if it was going to become an all-electric fleet, then the catalytic converter recycling industry eventually was going to go the way of the dodo bird.
Yeah, it would have been phased out
Would
completely.
have been phased out completely 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, whatever the time frame is. I don't know what it would have been. But and then so what does this mean for states? That means that the states are not able to increase or enforce higher carb standards going forward.
That's positive.
And I can imagine there's going to be some pushback or legal pushback, probably challenges in the courts somehow, some way. Also, the courts might get involved and delay it until final resolution. But I don't know. My sense of the matter is that the courts aren't going to be able to do very much the way the elimination of the waivers were written, because there were some rule changes done prior to elimination of the waivers. So I don't believe that judicial review is actually an avenue of pursuit that will be viable, if you know where I'm going with this, because it's not like they're just eliminating. They said specifically in the waiver itself that it can't be under judicial review.
Yeah. And they can't come out down the road and say, okay, we're stopping ICE engines now. We want to end it.
Right.
That's out. Well, this is all positive information to me personally as a consumer. I have the freedom of choice for multiple options of ICE vehicle engines, hybrid vehicles. So also as an automotive recycler, that's great news. Let's go 2025. We'll still have a lot of automotive parts, it sounds like, here in the future to come. Thank you for watching.